If everyone could take a seat, we're going to get started.
Okay. Sorry about that, Linda. I'm raising it. You're going to lower it. I apologize. Good afternoon. I'm David Turkile, the Associate Vice Chancellor for Auxiliary Services here at Vanderbilt University. Welcome to the Waste Not cooking demo hosted by the James Beard Foundation and the Nashville Food Waste Initiative here at the E. Bronson Ingram Dining Hall. We're excited to be joined by Chef Julia Sullivan of Henrietta Red and Jordan Rogers, the Executive Chef of Vanderbilt Campus Dining. I will warn you that I'm going to say food waste more than once in this speech, so bear with me. Food waste presents an enormous opportunity to reduce negative environmental impacts and combat food insecurity, not just globally, but here in Nashville. Vanderbilt University's campus dining team has implemented a number of programs to fight these issues. Some of the actions include implementation of Lean Path food waste tracking solution in every dining hall. For some background, Lean Path is a combination of hardware, software, and customer engagement platforms which deliver food waste prevention results for any kitchen. Vanderbilt Campus Dining was the first program in the country to provide real-time waste data to students through the Lean Path Spark platform. The team formed a partnership with a locally based compost company to implement a campus-wide food waste composting program. The program diverts all pre- and post-consumer food scraps from the food waste stream and converts them into compost. The team installed and utilizes the Orca food waste conversion system in the Rand Dining Center. This system eliminates food waste through its patented food digestive system. We also partnered with students to donate unused meals, which are converted into groceries and delivered to the Second Harvest Food Bank. These programs help inspire our students here at Vanderbilt, the leaders of tomorrow, to become more active and engaged citizens. Vanderbilt Campus Dining is proud of its accomplishments and will continue to strive toward our goal of zero waste. Vanderbilt University is excited to once again host this event to demonstrate how some simple changes in the kitchen can make a profound impact in reducing food waste. I'm pleased to introduce Linda Bregan, an esteemed faculty member of Vanderbilt Law School and Senior Strategic Advisor to the Nashville Food Waste Initiative. Linda.
Great. Thank you so much, David. And you know, I just want to say when David joined Vanderbilt, it was a real game changer. If you ever wonder whether a person can make a difference, all of the things he just talked about were things that he spearheaded. So welcome, everyone. Thank you all for being here today. Special hello to the many hundreds of you that are live streaming this. I hope you guys already made your Waste Not cocktails. We have to wait here in the room until the end of the demo. Thank you, Vanderbilt, for this amazing venue. It's so beautiful, and your team has just been fantastic. Thank you. And James Beard Foundation, you've been real leaders on food waste, and we're just so thankful for the partnership. And Mayor Cooper, I think this is your second food waste reduction event, and we are just really, really appreciative of your leadership on this issue. And Julia Sullivan, thank you, from Henrietta Red. She's taken time away from her incredible restaurant that is incredibly busy, and we just really appreciate your being here. I told Julia that a lot of people couldn't make it because of fall break here in Nashville, and many people said, I'm really sad because it's my favorite restaurant. So yeah, you've got a lot of fans. So, and I need to say a special thank you to my colleagues at Environmental Law Institute, especially Jesse Sugarman, who really made this possible. So the Nashville Food Waste Initiative started in 2015 as a pilot project of the Natural Resources Defense Council. They wanted to test local approaches to addressing food waste. So why does an environmental group care about food waste? We throw away up to 40% of our food in this country. And I'd like to say that again because you have to stop and think about this. 40% of our food, up to 40%, we're throwing away. And that hurts the environment. When we do that, you think about all of the resources that went into making that food, the energy, the water, the chemicals, the land, and then we just throw it away. And when we throw it away, 95% of it goes to landfill. And in landfill, it decays and produces methane, which is a very potent greenhouse gas. And it hurts our pocketbooks. Food waste costs the average American $1,300 a year, and it hurts people, right? We have 1 in 8 Americans is food insecure at the same time that we are throwing away all of this food. So in short, it does not make any sense, but I think the good news is that we're making progress, and it's definitely addressable, if not solvable. So Nashville Food Waste Initiative, fortunately, is now a permanent project of the Urban Green Lab. It started as a pilot, as I mentioned. We work here in Nashville, but we really hope that what we're doing here is a model for cities around the country. And I'm going to hand it over to Todd Lawrence, who is the director of Urban Green Lab, to talk about some of our work here in Nashville. And then we will get to the demo soon and the mayor.
Well, thank you, Linda, for those remarks. And Linda is really, should be complimented for helping to bring the Nashville Food Waste Initiative up to its feet here in Nashville. Without her over these past 5 or 6 years, we would not be here today. So really thank you, Linda, for your leadership. As Linda said, the Nashville Food Waste Initiative is here to help reduce wasted food. And what we're doing here in Nashville is really no different than what's happening in the rest of the country. And so we are following what they call the food recovery hierarchy, which is the first thing you want to do is prevent wasting food in the first place. That's the number one thing we want to do. But then if we can't do that, we need to rescue surplus food for those in need. And 1 in 7 Nashvillians are food insecure, meaning they don't have regular access to healthy food. So a lot of that food could be given to people who need it. And then finally, composting and recycling food scraps so that we can create healthy soils. So these are the priorities of the Food Waste Initiative, and we take a multifaceted approach here in Nashville. We work to do outreach and education in the community, policy development. We work very closely with a number of you here in the room, and then, of course, capacity building to make sure that we have strong institutions who can really do this right and reduce wasted food. And, of course, we elevate current examples and institutions and projects that are already happening here in Nashville and then create new projects where they don't exist. So bottom line, we elevate and we create. And just to give you a little bit of a sample of what we do at the Nashville Food Waste Initiative, we do everything from training K through 12 teachers how to teach about food waste in their classrooms to creating chef training videos, which our chef Julia Sullivan was a part of this year to train other chefs about how they can reduce wasted food. We thankfully work closely with the mayor on the Mayor's foodsaver challenge to encourage restaurants and the hospitality sector to adopt food waste strategies. Thank you, Mayor Cooper, for your leadership on that as well. And then finally, we help to integrate food waste into the climate action plan. Other cities are trying to create their own climate action plans, so we've created a model for integrating that special issue into their long-term planning. So we do a lot, and this is another example tonight of the partnerships we bring together, and we're really grateful for those. Now I'll turn it back to David for introducing Mayor Cooper.
Thanks, Todd. I'm excited to introduce our next guest, Mayor John Cooper. Mayor Cooper has demonstrated a commitment to champion sustainability in a number of different areas, including food waste. One of the programs, as mentioned by Todd, that the mayor has implemented is the Mayor's Foodsaver Challenge, which includes some 40 restaurants, Vanderbilt campus dining, and other partners in the Nashville hospitality industry. The participants have committed to taking on food-saving actions on an ongoing basis. Some of these actions include educating staff and customers on food waste reduction, donating surplus food to nonprofits, donating food scraps for animal consumption, implementing programs to compost organic waste. Participating in the Mayor's Food Saver Challenge has been shown to reduce the amount of food the members of the group are sending to Middle Tennessee landfills while helping to relieve hunger by donating wholesome, edible food to local nonprofits serving over 100,000 food insecure residents in Davidson County. It is my pleasure to introduce the 9th Mayor of the Metropolitan Government of Nashville and Davidson County, the Honorable John Cooper.
Well, thank you for those remarks, and thank you, Linda and Todd. That was very inspiring, and I just, as a graduate, I have to look around and be awed by the building that we're in, and so pleased for Nashville to have such a great partner that we have in Vanderbilt, and how excellent Vanderbilt is. And with everybody here, now our host, we do want to thank the Chancellor for having this event here, and Chef Rogers and Chef Sullivan. Thank you. Henrietta Red is an inspiration to all of us. Anna McBride and Ashley Koziak and Linda and Todd, of course. Thank you for your leadership. Now, one of the things I'm looking forward to as mayor is the day I no longer have to talk so much about COVID, but that's not today. That day is within reach, and let's keep encouraging everybody that we know to continue to get vaccinated. But for tonight's purposes, let's start there, because this story has an edifying ending, and this is what I mean by that. When COVID arrived at Nashville's door, we knew we had to solve a public health problem. And we knew we had to solve an economic recovery problem, and we also knew we had to solve a food insecurity problem, and that Davidson County families would need help, and Metro school children would need help, and they would need access to healthy meals, even when they were not in the school campus or in the school environment. And so that was a challenge for Nashville to get solved, to find creative ways to put our restaurant and hospitality workers back to work, and back to work serving our city. Now, the marvelous Brenda Haywood in my office asked her to lead a food security working group, and if you've ever met Brenda, then you know she is, that a community in need turns her into a force of nature. And Brenda and Metro and you, our partners from the nonprofit and hospitality sectors, went to work, and I'm here today to thank you. Amazon delivered meals, Lyft delivered meals. Together, those two companies alone just got under 19,000 food boxes out into the community. Metro Police officers delivered meals. Conexión Americas distributed more than 33,000 food boxes. The Metro Action Commission stepped up, Second Harvest stepped up, and in such a tremendous way, there was enough community support to serve nearly 239,000 neighbors during the pandemic. Yes, that is 250,000 Nashvillians. And everybody working together with Metro schools managed to serve more than 2 million meals. And chefs from some of Nashville's best restaurants served 30,000 meals over 3 months. Now, COVID was tough. It's been one of the hardest things that our city or any other city has been through, but it brought out the best in us, the best among us, and that's an example of our resilience and our ability to execute a bright future ahead. Because, let's be clear, the work of fighting food insecurity in Nashville is going to continue. COVID made it a dire need, but it is going to continue, and just this week, there's opening a free food pantry at TSU to serve students there, but there is more to do. As Linda and Todd were saying, up to 40% of the food in this country goes to waste. That means every single day, Americans discard enough food to fill Nissan Stadium. Every single day. And 95% of that waste ends up in landfills. And meantime, 100,000 Nashvillians, including 25,000 children, live on the very edge of food instability and insecurity. So that's what this evening is about. Good food, yes, but also good people rallying to great cause to bring our community together about something that I think we should all be able to agree on and solve. Now, our music and landmarks make us famous, but our willing to care for each other, our refusal to give up on being great neighbors, that's what's going to make Nashville great. That's what all of you are here accomplishing for our city. So let's make a goal. Let's make a big goal for ourselves. Let's reduce food waste by 50% by 2030. All right, let's get active and get that done. And we're only going to be able to do it with your help, with everybody here putting their shoulders to the wheel, with the industry and the industry leaders showing us the way to how to get that done. And to all of you in the restaurants that participate in Nashville's Food Saver Challenge, you're a central part of that work. And again, I want to thank the James Beard Foundation, the Nashville Food Waste Initiative, the Environmental Law Institute, and the Urban Green Lab, and here our hosts today at Vanderbilt also. You are the community partners that are making us stronger. You're getting us to where we can tackle one of the crazy challenges of American life. How can you have so much food waste and so much food insecurity at the same time? That's something that's going to be solved by leadership, by each of you, by making it a priority, a conscious and intentional priority to create a better community for all of us going forward. And again, thank each of you for the challenge of COVID and getting us through this. And then now let's use that same strength to achieve our goal of reducing food insecurity going ahead and food waste. Thank you all very much.
Well, thank you so much, Mayor Cooper. Your leadership has been so important on these issues. We're really fortunate to have a mayor who cares so deeply about these issues. I am going to turn it over now to Ann McBride, the Vice President of Programs for James Beard Foundation. I just want to reiterate how much we've enjoyed working with you. Ashley Koziak pretty much made this event happen. We're very grateful to you, and you are going to introduce our chef and maybe say a few words about the foundation's work on food waste.
Thank you, Linda. It's been an honor and a pleasure to be here in Nashville and to partner with the Nashville Food Waste Initiative for this event. Thank you, Mayor Cooper, for your leadership. It's so great to hear the great work and the important work that Nashville is doing, and there's no doubt that what is taking place here will serve as a model for other cities around the country to follow. Thank you to the Environmental Law Initiative and the Urban Green Lab and Vanderbilt. Everything has been just effortless, and I will also give a special shout out to my colleague Ashley Koziak, who's in the back of the room and has truly made this happen. So thank you to everyone. Before I introduce Julia Sullivan, our wonderful chef this afternoon, I wanted to share a few words about the James Beard Foundation's commitment to sustainability in general and food waste in particular. We approach sustainability through an environmental, economic, and social lens and take into consideration the ever greater impact of climate change on living conditions and food production worldwide, supply chain strains that have been further stressed by a global pandemic, and a need for the culinary industry to create a more equitable, accessible, transparent, and sustainable work culture. Food waste is an important area of sustainability focus for the foundation, one where chefs, consumers, producers all can make a significant difference with behavioral modification. Typically, chefs look to avoid waste when they prep ingredients, since anything they don't use costs them money for nothing. Practical knowledge that makes them ideal teachers to help everyone reduce their own impact at home too, since as Linda mentioned, the average American throws out $1,300 worth of food every year. So over the years, we've partnered with a number of chefs to share their strategies to reduce food waste, as today with Chef Sullivan. This includes publishing 100 recipes from alumni of our chefs' boot camps for policy and change, where food waste is also part of the curriculum, and a book titled Waste Not: How to Get the Most of Your Food. Waste Not is a comprehensive book on full-use cooking, how to use all of the food you buy and avoid food waste. Its chapters include From Stem to Stem, which focuses on using all parts of fruits and vegetables, Tops and Bottoms, Pits and Peels, which offer recipes and ideas to use up the parts of an ingredient you're often left with, such as radish and carrot tops, grapefruit peels, and pineapple skins. And speaking of radish and carrot tops, I hope you'll all notice the beautiful edible arrangements in the back of the room during the reception, which make a lot of use of things you might otherwise discard. And second-day solutions, which feature ideas for new dishes to create from your leftovers. Another project we've developed with Ruby is called Creating a Full-Use Kitchen, an online course designed to introduce food waste reduction methods into the culinary classrooms. It includes information on the history of food waste and creative approaches for combating it. Teaching that as part of a cooking school curriculum is really key because it means that from day one, cooks have this idea of full use into their practices and their lifelong applications, if you want, and their lifelong cooking philosophy. So very important, day one in the cooking school, that you start putting that in the mind of chefs. And I'll conclude by highlighting the term full-use kitchen, as in this course title. Waste is just not a very appealing notion when it's conflated with food. It doesn't make you particularly hungry. So instead, reshaping our thinking around full use is a much more positive sentiment, and one that might invite more inspiration in your own kitchens too. When you buy food, when you look at what's in your fridge, think about making full use of it all. And I invite you to visit jamesbeard.org/wastenot, which features links to recipes and tips for more full use thinking. Speaking of recipes and tips, time to turn to our culinary demonstration. It is my great pleasure to introduce Julia Sullivan, the chef and co-owner of Henrietta Red, right here in Nashville, where Julia was born and raised. After spending many years studying and cooking in New York, she returned to Nashville in 2013 with a plan to open a business of her own, which she did in 2017 with Henrietta Red. Henrietta Red, I'm sorry, it's a hard word for me to pronounce. Henrietta Red was named one of America's 50 Best New Restaurants by Bon Appetit in 2017, one of GQ's Best New Restaurants in America 2018, and was recognized as a 2018 James Beard Foundation Award semifinalist in the Best New Restaurant category. Additionally, Julia was named one of the best young chefs in America by Rob Report, one of the best new chefs in 2018 by Food & Wine, and recognized as a 2019 semifinalist and 2020 finalist in the James Beard Foundation Awards Best Chef Southeast category. Julia Sullivan.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. Thank you to Vanderbilt, Campus Dining, and Jordan for being so accommodating, as well as the James Foundation and Urban Green Lab for hosting us today. So first off, Henrietta Red right here in Nashville, over in Germantown. For those of you who don't know us, we are an oyster bar and seasonally focused restaurant. We have a big emphasis on vegetables, sustainable seafood, and some local proteins as well. We try to also use as much local produce in our cooking, and of course, reduce waste wherever possible. We partner with Compost Nashville to take away most of the food waste we produce, which includes our oyster shells, which you can imagine are very heavy. We do compost those, and it accounts for a lot of what we end up putting into those bins every week. So obviously, we've talked a lot about environmental factors. For us, that's a big motivation. We, of course, pay Compost Nashville to take away our waste every week. So it's a choice that we make because we align ourselves with a lot of the things that Mayor Cooper talked about, reducing waste and diverting waste away from the landfill here in Nashville. Additionally, as Anne spoke about, running a restaurant is a lot of times like running a household. There are many, many mouths to feed. For us, about 300 a night. We also have a staff of close to 50 employees. And so we are managing a lot of food that's coming in the back door every day. And of course, our margins are pretty small, even smaller since COVID, as everything continues to calibrate. The market becomes more competitive. Wages have been on the rise. And so everything we can do to maximize every piece of food that comes in the back door is wise for us. So there's a lot of ways that we do that, of course. The first one being as creative as we possibly can with the menu to use all parts of everything that we're cooking. So that can look like, with seafood, we're bringing a lot of whole fish in the back door. So we are always trying to use all parts of that fish, from the head to the tail. We use the bodies and the bones in our stocks that we use for soups and sauces. We also, every time we're cutting fish, we're saving trim, frequently salting it, that we're using, we'll use the fresh fish to cook and serve to you tonight. We then might salt something to turn into a bacalao or a cod fritter for a later menu application. So always thinking about ways that we can incorporate all of that trim into other applications. And the same goes for vegetables, whether we are using peels and trims and tops and tails to go into stocks and sauces, or if we are taking some of that trim and fermenting it or pickling it, preserving it in some way to be incorporated into a dish later on. We just put a new grouper set on the menu last night, for instance, that has a celery root puree in the preparation. We're using all of the peels and trim from the celery root and parsnips in a stock that then goes to picking up the dish. We're also using plums that we purchased this summer that then fermented as a garnish for the dish. So always kind of thinking forward to next season about how can we use what's growing now, especially going into the fall and winter months. So the dishes we're doing today, or the dish we're doing today, is actually pretty simple, pretty straightforward. I wanted to keep it vegan so that it's appealing to every dietary restriction, hopefully also fairly cost conscious. So we're going to be making two things out of one butternut squash. So first is going to be a squash salad that's just made from raw peels. And the second is going to be a squash puree that we're going to serve with a roasted cauliflower. One of the inspirations for this particular menu is that I live in a small household, and so for me, buying one butternut squash is like, this could feed me for a week, right? Have you ever cut into something like this and been like, what do I do with all this? And then you turn it in puree, and you're eating butternut squash puree for the rest of your life. So 2 years ago, we were approached by Blue Hill at Stone Barns, has a seed company, Rose 7 Seeds, where they're actually breeding vegetables now for culinary characteristics. So not just, disease resistance and all of those things are always important in plant breeding, but sometimes we see through the homogenization of these varieties that we lose flavor and desirable cooking characteristics along the way. So they've started to focus on that in part of their breeding process. And they came up with a smaller squash called the honey nut, which when we tasted raw had sort of coconutty, almost like tropical fruit flavor characteristics. So we started making a salad from the raw butternut or honey nut that we treated almost like a green papaya salad. So we'll start off by just cutting straight down the center of this squash, and we're going to end up using half for the salad and half for the puree. The reason I'm showing you this is because I already started prepping this one, but I want to just show you, obviously, with these squashes, there's some seeds inside, which we also used in the dish. So first and foremost, just using a spoon and taking out the seeds, and then I went through and separated those out from any flesh that was left. So you can see the seeds there you're just separated from any of this trim, which you can roast up with your half squash and throw into the puree as well. So for these seeds, all I did was toss them in a little bit of olive oil and salt, and then toasted them for about 10 minutes in a 325-degree oven. And we'll come back to that later, and that will end up being the garnish for our finished dish. So just setting this aside and setting our seeds aside. And of course, if you do produce any trim that you're not going to incorporate into the dish, you can do what we do in the restaurant, which is to keep some sort of bowl on your station that you're tossing those trim into the bowl as you go, and then you can empty it into your compost container, or if you have a space in your yard, empty it into there. So collecting that along the way. So once you have your first half of the squash cleaned out and a vegetable peeler, for this application, we're going to actually take the outer peel off, so that will go into our compost bin. But something that not everyone knows about these winter squash varieties is that most of them, unless they've been maturing for quite a while, the skins are all edible. And so, a lot of work actually goes into doing all of the peeling. But if you're just going to be tossing it into the oven to roast it, you can actually do that with the peels on. We have a beautiful fall gnocchi dish on the menu right now, where we're using a butterkin squash variety that we're purchasing locally, and we're just cutting those and leaving the skins on, and that gets roasted off and put into the gnocchi dish. For this raw application, though, I'm going to take the peel off and just go ahead and put that in my compost pile. Another nice thing about this peeled salad is that even for a chef, sometimes cutting these squashes it's a struggle. So we're just going to peel this right into the bowl, and it makes a really nice shaved vegetable salad without having to buy a spiralizer or any sort of extra kitchen equipment. A lot of our home kitchens are so cluttered with equipment and plastic things that we don't even utilize that often. A lot of times there's a way to sort of do these things at home without purchasing anything additional. And once that outer peel is taken off, all of this is usable. So I'm, in the interest of time, only going to do about half of it right now. And the exciting thing about these recipes we're doing here is that Vanderbilt Campus Dining has prepared them for us so that you all get to taste them after the presentation. So starting there with our peeled butternut squash, and then we have a radicchio here, which is another nice fall-winter green. It's a chicory, so it's very, very bitter. We make this salad typically in late summer, so sometimes we'll incorporate things like cantaloupe, shishito peppers, sun-gold cherry tomatoes are delicious. In the fall, I like to incorporate some of these more bitter greens because it has a really beautiful color, also a really nice flavor. And we're just going to shave this with the side of our knife, do what we call a chiffonade, which is just a very thin julienne. One of the reasons I like radicchio, besides its beautiful color and flavor, is, again, I mentioned, even if you don't live in a small household, frequently you buy your food and you have the best of intentions with meal prep at the beginning of the week, and then often we forget to use things, or it's more than we can utilize at one time, and so later that goes to waste. Radicchio is a really nice small size, so you can cut this up, incorporate it into salads. You can also braise it, you can toss it in olive oil and grill it. It has a very small core section right here, which if you put it on the grill, is totally edible. And it's something that, because the flavor is so delightful, I love to serve, if you're grilling fish or steaks, it makes a really nice kind of bitter grilled salad green as well. So incorporating that into the butternut for some color and flavor, and then we're going to make just a quick, easy dressing. So starting with some orange. Of course, every part of all the citrus fruit is actually usable. So I'm going to start just by zesting it for our dressing here with a microplane. Mary Cooper obviously mentioned the pandemic, but another thing that hit the Nashville restaurant industry really hard last year was the tornado. We lost power in Germantown for 6 days, and if you can imagine, you have an 8 by 8 foot refrigerator full of food and the power goes down for 6 days, all of a sudden you're left with a lot of oranges to process. So we were actually very lucky. At the time, we were also working out of the basement of the Nashville Symphony with our catering company. And so we took all of the citrus fruit from the restaurant and also collected from our neighboring bars and restaurants, and we turned hundreds of pounds of fruit into marmalade, which we then sold through fundraisers to help hospitality workers during the pandemic. So it was pretty amazing to see that come full circle, and also know that so much of this food was not going to waste. So at this point, I'm going just to take off the top and bottom and then use my knife to cut away the peel. This is a nice way to peel an orange just on your cutting board without having to peel it. Of course, we're not going to be turning this pith into marmalade today, but you certainly can. So this will also go into my compost pile. And then now that I have all the pith removed, I'm just going to dice up the citrus to add to the salad, and I'll use the zest I already have here in the dressing. So I'm just going to give this a quick dice. So let's start here. I do this every day, but you can imagine it's actually quite nerve-wracking in front of this group of people. So excuse me if I make a mistake. All right, so after the orange, we also have a lime. I'm going to zest that as well. And then use a little bit of the juice in the dressing, and then we're going to save a little bit of it to put over the top of the salad at the end, just for a little bit of extra acid. So we use a ton of zest. It's a joke at Henrietta Red how much zest we put into things. Because again, I'm doing one lime in front of you, but imagine if you're making, dressing for 300, how many limes you have to sit and zest. We talk about hosting fundraisers called Zest for Life, because it's such a big part of so many of our recipes. But it really does, it's like one small extra step that adds a ton of flavor into dressings, cures for that fish trim that I was talking about, all sorts of things. Okay, so I'm going to save, like I said, a little bit to add on at the end. Then I have some ginger that I'm just going to peel with a spoon, and I'm going to set aside the ginger peels because Jordan is going to use them in his waste not cocktail. So I'm just using the side of my spoon here to remove that stem. I'm going to put it into this bowl. Sorry, not stem, peel. We're also going to be saving our mint stems for Jordan and a little bit of our squeezed lemon. So all of that peel going straight into the bowl, and then I'm going to grate the ginger on a microplane as well. Ginger has a lot of fiber in it, so it doesn't always grate very easily on the microplane. So you can also mince it on your cutting board. We're just going to use about 2 teaspoons in this recipe, so I'm just going to grate it. And there's that. And then last, we're going to take a garlic clove, so just raw garlic, and grating it in. So I really like the microplane as a tool, and as you can see, it saves you a lot of mincing if you just grate straight into your dish. All right, so last I have a little bit of sriracha. You can use any sort of Asian hot sauce or fermented chili paste like a sambal oelek. And Then we are going to just stir that together with a little bit of olive oil, as well as some pistachios. Again, I'm going to reserve some for garnish. And we are going to add that directly into our butternut squash and radicchio for the salad. Some salt. And then last, I have some mint and basil that I'm going to quickly pick and reserve the stems for our cocktail. So just a bit of Thai basil here, which is nice with this flavor profile. And then a little bit of mint. And we'll put half into the salad and then the other half as garnish. So there are stems.
Julia, do you do that at the restaurant too? Keep the stems and everything for your bartender?
We do use the stems for different things. Not typically for the bar. That's something that Jordan and I talked about. But often we will use the stems in stocks and to flavor fermentations and different applications like those. So just giving these a quick chiffonade as well. And we'll add some in here. So I'm just going to give this a stir. And then we'll plate it with our garnish. And then we'll go on to the second part of the recipe, which is using our other squash that we roasted for the puree. All right, so plating this up. Just a really nice kind of unexpected, colorful salad that is a nice vegetable alternative to doing a traditional lettuce salad. Really bright, great flavors. Another reason I love it is going into fall, we just sort of think of, squashes and root vegetables and all these things that are roasted and very, very heavy. This is a way to use these fall vegetables that is really crunchy and light and bright and has a little bit of a summery vibe still. And then so we will use the rest of our lime to finish that off and just a little bit of extra salt. So there is that first recipe. Thank you. And then the remainder of our peel going into the compost. Just wipe this board down quickly.
Could you fry the peels or toast them or do something at home with them?
For the citrus peels?
No, the butternut squash peel.
Oh yeah, actually, I haven't tried frying the peels, but one of the things we're doing on the same grouper dish that I mentioned is, you can peel, we're peeling parsnips and frying those and using them for the garnish, and you can use the whole parsnip for that application as well. I have not tried butternut squash peels, but I will now. So like I said, we have the other half of that squash I just roasted whole. I scored it lightly and then put a little bit of olive oil and salt. And then we have some garlic that I just crushed the whole cloves and cut and put into a little pot of oil and just brought it up from cold on the stove. It toasts to nice golden brown, which kind of deepens the flavor, takes that bitterness, the raw heat from the garlic off of there. And then I took the oil from toasting the garlic and strained it off, and we'll use that in the puree as well. So, and then we have some lemon to season that with, and we will reserve the peel from the lemon for the cocktail as well. So like I said, all of the skins on these squashes are actually edible. So we'll just remove this little bit of hard stem, but the rest of it is going to just go straight into our blender, which again sort of decreases the amount of prep work you have to do up front. Y'all have to bear with me on this blender because doing very small quantities like this can sometimes be a little difficult. So we'll just add the toasted garlic to that, and really that's it, just those 4 ingredients: the squash, the garlic oil, and then lemon and salt. So I'm just gonna go ahead and puree this up as well as I can in here. Now, if you prefer a smoother puree, you could absolutely take the peel off, but I think this is such a nice way to not create additional waste and also just make life easier on yourself. So we'll start this guy. Yeah. These are always difficult with such small amounts, but I will go ahead and add oil, and that'll help us. If we don't get it super smooth, we can just pretend. All right, so add a bit of salt. And I'll just go ahead and add some lemon juice to help it get moving. So we will zest that first. And then going straight in with the juice. And we're going to reserve those for Jordan. All right. So very, very easy puree. It's a nice thing to use in place of other sauces or things like mashed potatoes or starches. Okay, that'll do us. All right. So of course, if we were making this at home, we would be hopefully pulling the squash straight out of the oven so it would be warm. That is definitely my preferred way to eat it. If you were making it ahead, you could also just warm it back up in a sauce pot. So we'll pull this out. And then what I'm going to be serving with it is just a roasted cauliflower, which I quartered and seasoned with some olive oil, salt, smoked paprika, and some of that microplaned garlic. So tossed it in those things. The nice thing about cooking the cauliflower whole is that the stem is really very edible. So once you remove kind of the more fibrous outer leaves, you can leave the smaller inner leaves and the stem attached to it. So kind of utilizing all of that instead of, say, cutting it into florets and throwing that stem away. The stem of the cauliflower can also be used in purees and soups and things like that. So with cauliflower, there really doesn't need to be a lot of waste, even though traditionally we cut the stem off and throw it away. So I have this cauliflower here, which I quartered and roasted whole. And then I have a pepita matcha, which matcha is sort of it's a spicy dried chili-based sauce from the Veracruz region of Mexico, frequently served with fish. It's got really delightful heat to it, a lot of smokiness. This recipe is made with peanuts. We instead subbed in also the toasted seeds from the butternut squash. So it has some toasted dried chipotle peppers, garlic, sesame seeds, pepitas or butternut squash seeds, a little bit of salt, brown sugar, and champagne vinegar. So that's going to be our sauce. So we'll just start by putting a little bit of this butternut puree down on the plate, and then again we're using the cauliflower sort of as the main attraction, sort of center of plate, instead of doing a piece of protein. So whole roasted cauliflower. And then be garnishing it with this matcha, which is really nice and smoky and spicy. We'll do that over the top. And then just finishing it with a bit of this toasted squash seeds and a little bit of our radicchio from before, just for some color. One of the really nice things about, I think, doing a meal like this is that obviously we used the whole butternut squash. We're using a couple of our different ingredients in different applications. And ultimately, you have a lot, very different, very distinct results. So you can serve the squash salad next to the squash puree, and the flavor and the outcome is really different and interesting and can still be served side by side. So I think that is it. Whole roasted cauliflower with butternut squash puree, and then our butternut squash salad.
We do have time for a few questions, and I have some in case no one does, but if one of you, yes, go ahead. That was one of my questions, and I'll repeat it for our live stream watchers. For someone who's not a chef, how do you know what's edible and what's not?
Or just try it. No, I mean, the truth is most parts of most vegetables are edible. And it's really just about using them in the appropriate fashion. So for instance, I did a big summer garden during the pandemic last year. Had 4 12-foot raised beds in my backyard, got chickens, did the whole pandemic thing. Now I'm like, what? I have no time. I don't know how I did it. But one thing that happens in Nashville, it gets very, very hot very, very quickly, right? So you might grow this beautiful garden, and then you live alone, and it's like, well, gosh, what do I do with all of this romaine lettuce that went to seed so quickly? Now all my heads of lettuce are bolted. So in that case, all of a sudden you have all this core and some leaves that really aren't ideal for salads. So what I did was I cut them down the middle, seasoned them with some olive oil and salt, and then put them face down on a charcoal grill and grilled it, and then tossed it in a Caesar dressing with some grilled mushrooms and different grilled vegetables. So I think it's just a little bit about thinking outside the box about, I know that this is all edible, how can I make it appealing to my palate, really?
Are there books or people you talk to when you want to make sure that, not necessarily poisonous, but for example, that there's no such thing as too much fiber if you eat the peel of butternut squashes or something? What are some of the sources you might look at?
Well, I'm not a doctor, but I think there are a lot of good, very, very good cookbooks now that are targeted more at using, like you said, top to tail, whether it's with proteins or vegetables or even foraged things, which there might be more questions about what's edible and what's not. When it's not something like a butternut squash, but it's a wild mushroom, like how can you identify that? And the nice thing is there is so much information on the internet and in books now that if it's something that you're interested in, just digging into it.
Yes?
Yes, absolutely.
Let me just repeat
the
the question, or unless you want to, but can you share some strategies that you've used to educate kitchen staff and guests?
Yes, absolutely. So I think that something that's really amazing that we don't always think about when we're training kitchen employees is that restaurant workers in particular are an amazing cross-section of people who live in our city. It's not all people who are college educated, even high school educated. Some of them are immigrants. Some of them are coming out of the military. There's all different ethnicities and sexual orientations, and so a lot of them have different cultural backgrounds. And it took me a few years of being back in Nashville, outside of New York City, where everyone is kind of, cream of the crop, to realize that you might be telling them about these things, and they might be speaking a completely different language and really have no idea what you're talking about. So, so really, really kind of going back to basics and getting kind of the understanding that there's a process, and it's really very simple in terms of things like keeping that one bin on your station or the one trash can with the green liner so that we can put it in, and understanding why paper towels might be able to go into that bin, but other types of waste may not. And just sort of realizing that there's so many food issues that are cultural, and there's also this sort of new lexicon around sustainability that's so new to so many people that you really just have to just get back to basics, I think.
And then for diners, because obviously as a chef and your servers depend on people ordering quite a bit of food, maybe more than they might end up eating. Do you have any strategies there to reduce waste once it's in the dining room?
From the table, yeah. So it is definitely something that comes up in our restaurant, because again, we're so frequently talking about margins, profitability, and so if one of the strategies we take is our restaurant is primarily shared plates, and so we do really try to educate people, the diners, about how much they should be ordering per table based on how many people are there, and then really, really involving our service staff in it. So we don't see every plate that comes back. We are just too busy, and they're kind of going a different direction, so we don't see every plate that's cleared from every table. But if we put a new grouper dish on the menu and we want to ensure that half of it's not going back to the compost bin, just saying, hey, we're putting this on tonight, can you guys give us feedback? Are they clearing their plates? Is there something they're not eating? And just really using our own staff as the tool to get that information back to us so we can see, are we feeding them too much? Is it not enough? And making sure also that our kind of price point and value matches up with that portion.
Yes. Where do you get your inspiration?
Well, I think for me personally, it's years and years of cooking. I've been doing this, I've been cooking professionally for 19 years since I was a college student. I would come back from college at Tulane in the summers, and I worked over on Hayes Street for Mambu and Da Vinci's Pizza and places that some of you older Nashvillians might remember. And from those places all the way to Blue Hill at Stone Barns, Per Se, Franny's, all of those experiences along the way sort of are in there and play into what I do now. Additionally, like reading cookbooks, eating food at other restaurants, and really thinking seasonally. We buy a lot of what we buy through Nashville Grown, our amazing food hub here in Nashville, which aggregates product from about 35 local farms at any given time. So we just looking and saying, hey, they have radicchio. Sun gold tomatoes are gone, but we want to keep the butternut squash on. Can we put that radicchio in there? I mean, I think that's actually how this salad evolved. But the truth is I also have an incredible team at my restaurant. My chef de cuisine, Pam, our pastry chef, Ashley. Everybody's the same. They're all coming from different restaurants, reading these books, having their own experiences, and then we all kind of come back to the table and come up with this stuff together. So it really is a process.
And do you do fermentation and preservation, those kind of things too?
Oh yeah, that's actually something I meant to talk more about. So besides coming up with creative uses, besides monitoring what consumers are consuming, besides compost, another huge outlet for the trim that we produce is preservation. So making pickles, fermenting items, like I said, salt curing items is a huge part of what we do. We are, and I think a lot of restaurants are, somewhat limited by space, and of course we're also limited a little bit by what the health department dictates. The health department is, of course, like a huge partner to restaurants and diners and all stakeholders involved, but sometimes there's a little bit of disconnect of what is actually safe, and so we can sometimes be limited by that. So there are some limits on what we can do in a professional kitchen, but fermentation obviously is something that utilizes a lot of trim. It's very on trend right now, and the flavors it produces are so complex and interesting, so I do it at home too.
Yep.
Speaking of safety measures, how do you best clean the skins of your vegetables? And I mean, you use it for zest and we're roasting it.
Yeah.
What is the best way? I mean, they sell all the fancy washes at Whole Foods.
How do you clean the skin of the vegetables and the fruits that you use?
Yeah, absolutely. So we typically just by washing it in water. We don't use any solutions or anything like that. And there are some vegetables that are higher risk than others. Actually, melons and squash are two of them. And the reason being that they grow in the garden on the ground. So even if you're using organic material, if a deer runs through your backyard in East Nashville, like that is that's a potential cause for a foodborne illness. So the biggest thing is just to wash the outside thoroughly before you even bring it into your prep table or put it on your cutting board. It's just to wash it. And we do the same with greens and citrus because we are always using that zest. But really, it mostly goes into just washing with water, and then from that, once it's washed, handling it properly.
We have time for one more, if anybody has another question. No? All right. Julia, thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
Julia, that was amazing. In addition to the artistry, your fine motor skills are truly impressive. I don't think if I practiced for like weeks, I could peel an orange with a knife like that. It was beautiful, so thank you. I want to remind everyone that the recipes are available online, the James Beard Foundation's website, and we have QR codes back there, and you can take pictures of the ingredients for the recipe. So it's my pleasure to introduce Jordan Rogers, the executive chef, Vanderbilt. You have been so gracious opening up your kitchen to us, and now we get the cocktail part.
Well, thank you, Linda. I remember sitting in this dining room with Linda and a few others planning this event, and they were like, oh, we're bringing in a guest chef. I was like, good, I don't have to do anything. Then Linda was like, you need to make a cocktail. Oh, great, all right. So I'm a recent transplant to Tennessee, and when you think of Tennessee, you think of whiskey. So we are going to use whiskey for this cocktail. If you're not a whiskey fan, it's a basic recipe that will go good with any other liquor you could use. Across campus, we cut about 300 pineapples in a week. So we have quite a bit of pineapple cores, so that gave me the inspiration for this cocktail. So without further ado, I'll roll into it. A lot of your pineapple cores are going to look very similar to this, nice and square if you have good knife skills. So to keep the core and to use it all, we're going to cut little cubes like that for the ice cubes in the cocktail. Then anything extra can be tossed back into the bowl, and we're going to blend it up later. Grabbing this stuff over here. So we have our lemon cores that we can use, ginger peels and mint stems. And also have a whole lemon just to give it a little more flavor. So we'll start off putting the pineapple into the blender. And you will need a very strong blender for this. Pineapple has quite a bit of fiber. Sugar helps to sweeten it up a little bit. Water will also help to get the blending going. Then to take the lemon peel, I like to just use my knife instead of a microplane. Not everyone has a microplane at the house. So we're just looking for that outside part. You don't want any of the white in there. We're going to throw all those pieces in there. And we're also going to juice this lemon into there. Try to get as much of the seeds out as possible. The blender will blend them up and be harmless. Then to also go with the food waste theme, a lot of pulp tends to get left into the lemon. So we're just going to come back and cut that pulp out. Add it in. So this is good for the compost. All right, now the fun part. We hope it all blends together.
Jordan, short of marmalade, is there anything that you do with the skins themselves of the citrus?
The outer white part is very bitter and tends to not taste great, but marmalade is a good use for them, especially with some sugar to help soften it up. Once you get that all blended, the best method is a fine strainer. Not a lot of you will have this at home, so you could use a cheesecloth, a coffee filter, any of those things will work. This material, or this liquid, is very fibrous, so you have to work it a little bit in the strainer. So we'll just use a spoon to help squeeze the rest of that juice out. Takes a fair amount of pineapple cores to get the juice you need, so you want to make sure you're squeezing as much of that juice out as possible. So while that's draining, we'll go ahead and get ready for our cocktail.
Do you do anything with the skins of those 300 pineapples?
That's a tough one. Since we go through so many pineapples, it's always been something I've wanted to try and figure out, but I haven't come up with anything yet.
I'll plug in the Waste Not book. There's a great recipe for pineapple tepache, right? Yeah, the Mexican fermented drink with the pineapple skins. So
all right.
It's delicious. That might be a lot to do with 300, but
yeah, definitely. So we'll start with our mint stems in there. Get a little bit of ice. Go with about 2 ounces of whiskey. And we'll take our liquid. And in the essence of time, these pineapple cores would be frozen, but not currently. So once you have everything in there, let's give it a shake. As you're shaking, the oils from the mint stems will tend to loosen up and start to flavor the cocktail. And there is your whiskey sour. Enjoy.
Are there other things that we're not using as ice cubes that we should? Because that was really inspirational to me to see you do that.
Any solid core would work great for an ice cube.
Great. All right. Any questions for Jordan? No? Yes.
I got here a little late, so I apologize if y'all already discussed this, but could you talk about what Vanderbilt is doing across campus to reduce food waste or find different solutions?
Sure. Yeah, so across campus, we compost in every single dining hall.
Oh, sorry, let me repeat. What is Vanderbilt doing around campus to mitigate food waste?
Sorry. So we compost pre- and post-consumer waste in all of our dining halls. We also have lean path trackers, which take pictures of any of our pre-consumer waste. So myself, our sustainability coordinator, can look at the pictures, see if anyone's not trimming properly, utilize the best to their ability, and then coming up with recipes like these to utilize some of that waste. We also, we'll make stocks and sauces out of some of the vegetable trims, meat trims, so on and so forth.
All right. Thank you so much, Jordan, and we'll get to enjoy the food and the drink at the reception shortly.
Thank you again, Chefs Julia Sullivan and Jordan Rogers, for those demonstrations. I'd like to welcome Chancellor Daniel Diermeyer to share some remarks before we begin the reception. An internationally renowned political scientist and management scholar, he is the 9th Chancellor of Vanderbilt University. Diermeyer is a Fellow of the American Academy of Arts and Sciences, the Guggenheim Foundation, and the Canadian Institute for Advanced Research. He has published 4 books and more than 100 research articles, mostly in the fields of political science, economics and management, but also in other areas ranging from linguistics, sociology and psychology, to computer science, operations research, and applied mathematics. Prior to his position at Vanderbilt, Diermeyer served in leadership and faculty roles at the Stanford Graduate School of Business, the Kellogg School of Management at Northwestern University, and as Dean of the Harris School of Public Policy at the University of Chicago. From 2016 until 2020, he was the provost of the University of Chicago, where he was responsible for all academic and research programs across the university and oversaw the university's $5 billion budget. Throughout his career, Diermeyer has been an advisor to governments, nonprofits, and leading companies, mostly in the areas of crisis management. He has served on the boards of several nonprofit organizations, the technology company Citybase until its acquisition by GTY Technologies, and the management board of the Federal Bureau of Investigation. Chancellor Diermeyer is currently a board member of Vanderbilt University Medical Center, the Field Museum, and Argonne National Laboratory. He is a native of Berlin, Germany, and a first-generation college graduate. Chancellor Diermeyer earned a PhD in political science from the University of Rochester. He also holds master's degrees in political science from the University of Munich and in philosophy from the University of Southern California. Chancellor Diermeyer has been a strong supporter of campus dining's team efforts and our broader institutional sustainability goals, which you will hear more about here shortly. Thank you for joining us, Chancellor Diermeyer.
Well, thank you, David, for the kind introduction, and thank you all for being here. I know I'm between you and whiskey sour, so I'm going to keep this brief. I want to first of all thank all of our chefs for the fantastic demonstration throughout the afternoon today, and I'm also glad to be here with so many community leaders and talented local chefs, and I want to give a special welcome to our mayor, Mayor Cooper. Great to see you with us today. Before we move into the reception, I particularly like to thank the Nashville Food Waste Initiative, the James Beard Foundation, of course, and then the entire team at the Mayor's Office for putting this event together. Today marks an example and a demonstration of how food can bring people together and make our city even stronger. At Vanderbilt, food and dining are essential to our culture of bringing people together and our students' daily lives. We approach food with the same commitment to excellence as we expect everything else to be done here at Vanderbilt. Students and their families have high expectations, and these expectations, I would say, even higher than they've ever before about dining, nutrition, sustainability, and choice. And I gotta tell you, when we fall short, we certainly know about it. We're very proud of our dining team, and I'm glad to see David here. We're particularly proud of them for maintaining such a high level of quality amid a nationwide labor shortage and severe supply chain challenges. This has not been an easy period for them, and I'm very grateful for all of them pulling together and keeping our campus well fed. We also see food and nutrition as an opportunity for us to advance larger social issues. As part of our equity, diversity, and inclusion efforts, we look to suppliers from underrepresented groups, very much focused here on our local areas in Nashville. And also we think about it as an area of innovation around our commitment to sustainability. And of course, this is a beautiful event to demonstrate that. But we've also eliminated single-use plastic bottles from campus already years ago and remain intentional about reducing waste and promoting recycling and composting across campus. Areas like food and dining are particularly visible components and part of our larger commitment to sustainability. It's important for universities like Vanderbilt to be leading sources of innovation in this and related areas. Whenever we can make an important difference to society, it's important for us to demonstrate the feasibility of new solutions that then can be used and adopted by others. This is one example or one motivation that led us to a partnership with the Tennessee Valley Authority and the Nashville Electric Services to move 70% of our power consumption to solar and renewable energy sources. This groundbreaking model was also adopted by the city and can be applied really to a variety of organizations moving forward. Recently, we also became an inaugural partner of Climate Vault, a nonprofit organization that has allowed us to become the first major research university in the United States to achieve carbon neutrality. These examples represent how we can maximize our impact when we partner with other organizations and regional leaders and bring that together with our capability for innovation. This is an important role for universities in partnership with our community to be incubators of new ideas that make a difference and then can be adopted by others. Together, we can set new precedents and demonstrate thoughtful and transformative solutions to our peers across the nation and across the world. It's wonderful to see this spirit at work today in our partnership with the Nashville Food Waste Initiative and the James Beard Foundation, as was amply demonstrated today in this wonderful event. So with that, thank you all for joining us today, and I look forward to the reception.